My name is Naomi Carter. I'm 34 years old. And if you had asked me before my mother's 60th birthday whether a dinner could change the course of an entire family, I probably would have laughed and told you that real disasters never announce themselves with folded napkins and catered appetizers. They slip in quietly. They wear cologne. They smile too much. They stand in your childhood home and act like they built the walls. My mother's birthday dinner was supposed to be simple. That was how she described it on the phone. Nothing big, she said, just family. But the second I pulled into the driveway, I knew she had either lied to me or lost control of the evening before it ever started. There were 2 extra cars parked along the curb. The porch lights were brighter than I remembered. Through the front window, I could already see the glow of candles and the silhouette of people moving around like this was a dinner party staged for a magazine spread instead of a birthday for a woman who used to celebrate by making her own lasagna and insisting nobody sing too loudly. When I stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was that the house no longer felt like my mother's. The warm beige walls my father and I had painted years ago were gone, replaced by a cold gray Nathan liked to call modern. The old wood console table in the hallway had disappeared too. So had the framed photos that used to line the wall. Our beach trips, my father holding up a fish with that ridiculous proud grin, me at 8 years old with paint all over my arms and one front tooth missing. In their place hung abstract art. Gray, black, white. Expensive-looking pieces that said nothing. It was like someone had gone room by room, stripping the house of memory and replacing it with attitude. Naomi. I turned at the sound of my mother's voice. She came toward me with a smile already half fragile before it reached her face. She looked beautiful, but tired in that polished way women do when they've spent too much energy making sure everyone else is comfortable. Her blouse was elegant, her hair softly curled, lipstick carefully done. Her eyes, though, looked worn. I hugged her and held on a second longer than usual. Happy birthday, Mom. Thank you, sweetheart, she said quietly. Then Nathan appeared. He came out of the dining room holding a glass of sparkling water like it was champagne, shoulders back, expression smug in that way men get when they think hosting an event makes them important. Good of you to finally make it, he said. Traffic, I answered, slipping off my coat. Didn't realize I needed a reservation to come home. He gave a soft chuckle, that fake little laugh he used whenever he wanted the room to think he was easygoing while making sure I understood I was being corrected. Just trying to make tonight special for your mother. It definitely looks special. He patted my shoulder like I was a teenager and walked back toward the dining room where his daughter Veronica was already sitting, half on her phone, half mentally checked out. Next to her sat Kyle, her boyfriend, who looked like the kind of man constantly bracing for judgment. Nathan liked men like that. Men he could rank. Men he could test. Men he could reward. The dining table was longer than I remembered. White tablecloth, folded napkins, candles, rental flatware. The kind of setup people post online with captions about gratitude and legacy and family, as if arranging a table nicely can hide what's wrong with the people sitting around it. I walked toward my father's old chair at the head of the table. It had always been his chair. After he died, nobody said it out loud, but it stayed his. Then, over time, it became more like a marker than a seat. A reminder that some absences still had shape. I reached for it. Nathan stepped in front of me before I could pull it out. That seat, he said with a smile wide enough for everyone to see, is for someone who actually matters to this family. The room went still. Then he turned slightly and nodded toward Kyle. It's for my daughter's boyfriend. There are moments when humiliation arrives hot and immediate, and there are moments when it lands cold. This one was cold, so cold it sharpened me. I looked at Nathan. He looked back at me, waiting for compliance, waiting for me to laugh it off. Waiting for me to understand that this was his stage now and I had been assigned my place somewhere lower in the script. Instead, I pulled the chair out and sat down. Nobody tells me where to sit in this house, I said, keeping my voice level. Silence. Veronica looked up from her phone for the first time all evening. Kyle froze, eyes darting between us, like he wanted to disappear through the floorboards. My mother's hands trembled. Nathan's jaw tightened for just a second before he forced out a laugh, too loud to be real. Well, he said, dragging the word through his teeth, that's one way to start dinner. I unfolded my napkin and placed it in my lap. He sat across from me, still smiling, but there was something harder behind his eyes now. The kind of look men get when they realize they were challenged in front of witnesses and don't yet know how to recover their power without making themselves look worse. Dinner moved on, but only technically. Nathan made sure every conversation bent back toward him. He talked about his firm, his clients, his ideas, his plans. He had a way of speaking that turned every topic into a stage for his own performance. Even when he complimented someone, it somehow sounded like self-praise reflected off another person's face. Halfway through dinner, he raised his glass. "To Elizabeth," he said, reaching for my mother's hand. "A woman who's been through so much and who finally has the stability she deserves." People murmured approval. I watched my mother smile the way women smile when gratitude has become part reflex, part survival. The toast sounded loving. But it wasn't about her. It was about what he believed he had given her. Stability, structure, himself. When dinner ended, the caterer started clearing, but my mother still rose automatically and began collecting plates anyway, because some habits survive even inside bad marriages. I followed her into the kitchen. She stood at the counter, stacking dishes with a distracted kind of focus, and that was when I saw the envelope lying near the fruit bowl. The return address read Heritage Life Insurance Company. The envelope was addressed to Nathan's office, but the name on it was Elizabeth Carter. My mother. I tapped the corner of it lightly. "What's this?" Her head came up too fast. "Oh, that's nothing." The answer arrived so quickly it almost overlapped the question. "Just something Nathan's handling." There was a beat. Then she added softer, "He takes care of all that stuff now." I looked at her. She would not meet my eyes. That was the moment something in me settled. Not certainty, not yet, but direction. I nodded like I believed her and helped carry dessert out to the table. The rest of the night moved the way bad theater moves, everyone hitting their marks, nobody saying the thing hanging in the air. Nathan stayed charming. Veronica stayed detached. Kyle stayed nervous. My mother kept smiling like the evening mattered to her more than it did. When I finally left, she hugged me at the door. Nathan stood just behind her with one hand resting lightly on her shoulder, the pose so practiced it looked almost proprietary. "Drive safe, sweetheart," Mom whispered. "Always do." Nathan smiled at me over her shoulder. There was something unbearable about that smile. Not because it was cruel, because it was confident. He thought he understood the board, thought he had already placed every piece where he wanted it. I stepped out into the cold night air and walked to my car slowly, feeling the weight of the evening press in only after I was alone. Before getting in, I turned and looked back at the house. It didn't look like my childhood home anymore. It looked staged, lit too carefully, arranged too precisely, like a photograph of a life meant to impress strangers while hiding what the people inside it had learned not to say out loud. And Nathan stood in the doorway for a moment before closing it, one arm still around my mother, as though he were framing the final image himself. That was when I knew the chair had never really been about the chair. It had been a test, a warning wrapped inside a performance. He wanted to see whether I would move, whether I would accept the edit, whether I would sit where he told me and let him rename the room. I got in the car, shut the door, and sat there with my hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield while the engine idled low beneath me. The insurance envelope. The way my mother rushed to answer. The way she kept avoiding my eyes. The way Nathan talked like he owned not just the house, but the future inside it. Something was wrong. I didn't know how wrong yet, but I knew this much. Men like Nathan always mistake silence for surrender. And that night, when I sat in my father's chair and refused to move, I had already told him something he was too arrogant to hear. I was watching, and once I start paying attention, I do not stop. Digging into the numbers, the dead wife, and a pattern too clean to ignore. A week passed before I touched anything. Not because I didn't want to, because I needed to approach it the right way. There's a difference between reacting and investigating. One gets you answers, the other gets you shut out. So I let things sit. I went to work. I answered emails. I built reports. I did everything I normally did, except now there was a second process running quietly in the background of my mind, looping through every detail from that night. The envelope. My mother's hesitation. Nathan's tone when he talked about stability. By the end of the week, curiosity had sharpened into something more structured. I wasn't angry yet. I was collecting. The same way I do when a client sends me financials that don't add up. You don't accuse. You build a picture so clear they can't deny it. It started small. I called my mom on a Tuesday evening. "Hey," I said casually, "have you heard anything from your bank lately? Statements, alerts, anything weird?" There was a pause. "Everything's fine," she said. "Nathan's helping me diversify a little. He's very good with numbers." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm sure he is." I didn't push. Not yet. 2 days later, I drove over with coffee and a light excuse. I was in the area, I told her. Thought I'd stop by. That wasn't unusual. I had always been the one who checked in. The responsible daughter. The one who fixed things before they became problems. She welcomed me in like she always did, but I noticed something immediately. The mail tray by the door was empty. completely empty. But on the kitchen counter, there were 3 envelopes addressed to Nathan. Not her. Him. I didn't say anything. Instead, I waited until we were sitting at the table before I eased into it. Hey, I said, stirring my coffee. You mentioned refinancing the house the other day. She nodded. Yeah, Nathan said it would help with taxes. My spoon stopped. Refinance what? She blinked at me like the question itself didn't make sense. The mortgage. Mom, I said carefully, the house has been paid off since I was in high school. That landed. Not hard, but enough. She hesitated, then stood up and walked over to the counter. I don't really understand all of it, she admitted, pulling a printed document from a stack. If you want to look, you can. There it was. Permission. That mattered more than anything. I took the paper and scanned it quickly. Then I pulled out my laptop. Do you mind if I check something? She shook her head. Go ahead. I logged into her account with her sitting right across from me, watching like this was something slightly boring, but ultimately safe. That's what Nathan had convinced her of, that the complicated parts of her life were harmless as long as he handled them. The first thing I did was pull up the public property database. Search, Elizabeth Carter. Address confirmed. Then I saw it. Not one mortgage. 2. Both active. Both within the last 12 months. Same property. Same lender. Same cosigner. Nathan Anderson. My chest tightened just slightly. I clicked deeper. Loan amounts. Dates. Refinance structures. Everything lined up too cleanly. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. I switched tabs and opened her credit summary. Her score had dropped from 780 to 520 in less than a year. I stared at the screen. Mom, I said slowly, have you opened any new credit cards recently? No, she said immediately. Why would I do that? I turned the screen toward her. 4 new accounts, all within the past 10 months, all tied to an address that didn't match the house. She leaned forward, confusion replacing the calm. I didn't sign up for those. I know, I said quietly. Everywhere I looked, Nathan's name appeared, on co-signed loans, on account authorizations, on mailing addresses. But when I opened a new tab and searched for his company, Anderson Strategic Investments, there was nothing. No registration, no filings, no business license, no website, no digital footprint at all. Just a name designed to sound legitimate. That was the moment the temperature shifted. Before, I had questions. Now I had direction. I opened Excel, created a new file, labeled the first column, date. Second, account. Third, change. Fourth, amount. Fifth, linked name. Then I started building. Every loan, every card, every change. Every time Nathan's name appeared, I wasn't rushing. I wasn't reacting. I was mapping. After about 30 minutes, I closed the laptop. Everything looks complicated, I said lightly. She exhales, relieved. That's why I let Nathan handle it. I never understood this stuff the way your father did. I nodded, but something in my chest tightened at that. Because my father hadn't handled things by taking them away from her. He had handled them with her. That difference mattered. I stayed another hour, talking about nothing important, watching her move around the kitchen, noticing how often she deferred to things Nathan had already taken care of. When I left, I didn't say anything. But the second I got home, I opened my laptop again. This time I went deeper. Court databases, archived records, public filings. You'd be surprised how much of a person's life exists in fragments online if you know where to look. Nathan Anderson didn't have a criminal record. That would have been too easy. But what he did have was a pattern. Short-term addresses, high-end rentals, different co-tenants listed over the years, different women, always mid to late life, always homeowners. I scrolled through the records slowly, letting the repetition settle into something recognizable. Then I saw a name I didn't recognize. Donna Anderson. I clicked. The article loaded in less than a second. Local woman dies in single car accident. Husband receives $800,000 insurance payout. My fingers went still on the keyboard. I read it once, then again, then a third time. The details were clean. Too clean. Late night. Rural road. No witnesses. Accident ruling. Insurance claim processed quickly. Husband not suspected of foul play. I stared at the date, 11 years ago. Then I looked at the name again. Nathan Anderson. Same age. Same middle initial. Same face. Just younger. I leaned back slowly, my mind assembling pieces faster than I could consciously track. 2 months after that article, the address records showed he had moved. New city, new residence, new co-tenant, another woman. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them again. This wasn't random. It wasn't sloppy. It was structured, deliberate, repeatable. That night, I drove back to my mom's house. I didn't call ahead. I just showed up. She answered the door in slippers, surprised but not alarmed. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. I just had a couple more questions. We sat in the living room. I kept my tone neutral. Careful. Measured. Do you ever check the mail yourself? I asked. She smiled faintly. I don't need to. Nathan organizes everything. Have you ever met any of his old friends? She hesitated. Not really. He doesn't talk much about his past. Why not? She looked down at her hands. He said it's painful. His wife passed away years ago. There it was. The story. The clean version. The one that made him sympathetic. The one that explained his secrecy without inviting questions. I nodded slowly. Do you know how she died? A car accident, she said softly. He doesn't like to talk about it. Of course he didn't. Because talking about it might invite details. And details are where patterns live. I wanted to push harder. I wanted to show her the article. To force the connection. But I saw the way her shoulders had already tightened. The way her eyes had started to close off. If I pushed now, she would retreat. And if she retreated, Nathan would tighten his grip. So I leaned back instead. Changed the subject. Stayed for another hour. And while we talked about nothing, I noticed something else. Nathan's laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. The screen glowed faintly before locking itself. For just a second, I saw it. A spreadsheet. Columns. Numbers. Headings like assets, accounts, returns. My language. His system. When I left that night, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I already knew what I was going to do next. At home, I opened a second spreadsheet. This one had a different title. Pattern. Row 1, Donna Anderson. Row 2, Elizabeth Carter. Same age range. Same asset profile. Same timeline markers. Same financial shifts. Same man. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I added a third row. I didn't fill in the name. Just one word in the first column. Next. It sat there, underlined by the cursor, blinking slowly in the dark room. That was the moment the truth stopped being theoretical. This wasn't just financial exploitation. It wasn't just fraud. It was escalation. And if I was right, if even half of this pattern held, then my mother wasn't just being used. She was being prepared. I closed the laptop gently, sat there in the silence, and for the first time since that birthday dinner, I felt something sharper than suspicion. Not fear. Not yet. Something colder. Something focused. Because now I wasn't just watching anymore. I was building a case. And Nathan, he had no idea who he had just tried to push out of her father's chair. The laptop, the blueprint, and the real meaning of exit window. By the time Saturday came around, I already had my excuse ready. Your Wi-Fi still acting up? I asked my mom over the phone. It drops sometimes, she said. Nathan's been meaning to look at it. Don't worry, I told her. I'll swing by and fix it. She sounded relieved. That was the part that stuck with me the most. Relieved. Like she had gotten used to waiting for someone else to solve problems that used to be hers. When I pulled into the driveway, Nathan's SUV was already there. Of course it was. He opened the door before I even knocked. Tech support's here, he said with that same polished smile. You'll have to show me your secrets, Naomi. Our router's possessed. I'll take a look, I said, stepping past him. The house felt even colder than before. Not physically, emotionally, like something invisible had settled into the walls. I set my bag down near the dining table and followed the Ethernet cable behind the cabinet, crouching just long enough to make the performance believable. The router was fine. Of course it was. It always is. The real reason I was there sat 10 feet away on the kitchen counter. Nathan's laptop. Open. Unlocked. Like he didn't think anyone in this house could read what he was writing. I watched him for a moment. He checked his phone, frowned slightly, then turned toward the back door. Gotta take this, he said, already halfway outside. The door slid shut behind him. That was it. No dramatic music. No countdown. Just a quiet moment where everything shifted. I stood up, walked to the counter, opened my bag. Inside was a small flash drive, the kind I use at work for quick backups. Nothing fancy. Nothing suspicious. I plugged it into his laptop. My software launched automatically. Simple interface. Clean. Efficient. Copy active directories. Documents. Spreadsheets. Cached downloads. Everything sitting on his desktop and local drive. Not the full system, just the working files. The ones people don't think to hide. The progress bar moved faster than I expected. Seconds stretching just enough to make me aware of every sound in the house. The faint hum of the refrigerator. The muffled tone of Nathan's voice outside. My own breathing. Steady. Controlled. The copy finished. I ejected the drive. Wiped it once with my sleeve out of habit. Slid it into my wallet. Closed the laptop exactly how I found it. Then I walked back to the router and pressed the restart button like that had been the goal all along. By the time Nathan came back in, I was crouched beside the cabinet again. Looks like it's fine now, I said. Might have been the provider. He grinned. You're a lifesaver. I stood brushing off my hands. Just needed a little professional help. He laughed. My mom smiled. Neither of them had any idea what kind of help I had just provided. I stayed another 10 minutes, just enough to keep everything normal. Then I left. But I didn't go home. I drove 2 streets down and parked beneath a tree where the streetlights didn't reach fully. Pulled out my laptop, plugged in the flash drive, and opened what I had taken. The file structure was organized. Too organized. Folders labeled cleanly. Categorized. Systematic. That alone told me something. This wasn't improvisation. This was a system. One folder caught my eye immediately. Legacy_plan. I clicked it. Inside were subfolders, dozens of files, spreadsheets, PDF scans, notes, everything neatly arranged like a business portfolio. 2 main directories split the structure. Archive_Donna_Anderson and estate_updates_Elizabeth. My stomach tightened. I clicked the first one, the past. Donna. Inside documents. Mortgage contracts. Loan agreements. Insurance policies. Driver's license scans. Vehicle registrations. Everything labeled, time-stamped, cross-referenced. He had archived her life, reduced it to files. Then I saw it. A PDF. Exit_window_Q1. I opened it. A checklist appeared on the screen. Short. Precise. Cold. Refinance joint account. Update insurance. Finalize beneficiary. Settle assets. Date. January. I leaned closer. Donna's accident. February. My fingers went still. Slowly I closed the file. Then opened the second folder. Estate_updates_Elizabeth. Same structure. Same categories. Same layout. But this time, the dates were recent. Active. Ongoing. I scrolled. Mortgage adjustments. Credit expansions. Insurance drafts. Beneficiary forms. Every step mirrored. Every move repeated. Then I found it. Another file. Same name. Exit_window_Q1. I opened it. Same checklist. Same sequence. Different dates. This year. At the bottom, one final line had been added. Once transition is complete, liquidate joint assets. I stared at the screen. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because in that moment, everything aligned. The loans. The credit collapse. The insurance envelope. Donna. My mother. The pattern. This wasn't about money. Money was the process, not the goal. The goal was the exit. And the exit was death. I leaned back slowly, my mind refusing to panic, choosing instead to lock into clarity. Nathan wasn't improvising. He was executing. A system. A sequence. A routine. Meet. Charm. Integrate. Control finances. Expand credit. Refinance assets. Increase insurance. Trigger exit. Collect. Move on. Repeat. I went back to the folder and started copying everything. Every file. Every document. Every note. Onto a second encrypted drive. Then a third. One for me. One backup. One hidden. When I was done, I cleared my activity traces. Recent files. Access logs. Anything that could hint someone had been inside. When I finally shut my laptop, the car felt too small. Too quiet. I sat there in the dark, staring at nothing. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't just suspicious. I wasn't just certain. I understood. Completely. My mother wasn't in financial trouble. She was in a timeline. And that timeline had an ending. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in years. A man from a financial crimes task force I'd worked with on a contract case. I didn't give names, just hypotheticals. If someone forges insurance documents, transfers assets, and builds patterns across multiple victims, I said. There was a pause on the line. Then he answered. That's organized financial exploitation. Another pause. If there's a death involved, his voice shifted slightly. It could be homicide for profit. That was all I needed. I ended the call, looked back at the house from where I was parked. Lights still on. Everything calm. Everything normal. From the outside. Inside. A plan was already in motion. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small notebook. On the first page, I wrote one word. Plan. Under it, another. Exposure. I didn't hesitate. Didn't second guess. Because at that point, this wasn't about confronting him. It wasn't about proving I was right. It was about stopping something before it reached its final step. I flipped the page. Wrote one more word. Thanksgiving. 3 weeks away. Full house. Witnesses. No escape. Perfect. Nathan thought he was building another exit window. What he didn't realize was that I had just turned it into a door, and I was going to close it on him. Hard. Thanksgiving exposure. The family implodes, and the law steps in. Thanksgiving arrived like a deadline. Not the kind you dread. The kind you prepare for so thoroughly that when it finally comes, there's nothing left to feel except execution. I got to the house early. An hour before anyone else. No rush, no drama. Just a steady rhythm in my chest that had nothing to do with nerves and everything to do with certainty. My phone sat in my pocket, the email already drafted. Subject line: Evidence of financial and insurance fraud. Nathan Anderson. Attachments. Everything. The legacy plan folder. The mortgage records. The forged signatures. The insurance policies. The exit window documents. Clean, organized, irrefutable. All I had to do was press send. Mom was in the kitchen when I walked in, moving too fast, smiling too much. The kind of energy people have when they're trying to hold something together that's already starting to crack. "You're early," she said. "Traffic was light," I replied. She nodded like that made sense. "Nathan wasn't there yet." That gave me time. I set my bag down and walked through the house slowly, like I was just taking it in. Same gray walls, same staged furniture, same feeling that none of it belonged to the life that had once existed here. But today, it didn't bother me, because today, none of it was staying the same. Veronica and Kyle arrived next. She barely looked at me. He gave me a polite nod, already tense. Then Aunt Ruth came in, warm but observant as always, followed by Nathan's brother Pete, quiet, watchful, the kind of man who looked like he had learned to keep his opinions to himself. And finally, Nathan. He walked in like he owned the room, confident, relaxed, smiling. Exactly the same. That was the part that almost impressed me. Even now, even with everything he had built, sitting one click away from collapsing. He still believed in his control. Dinner started like any other. Small talk, polite laughter, the clink of utensils. Nathan carved the turkey with unnecessary flair, narrating his own actions like he was hosting a show no one had asked to watch. He talked about legacy, about growth, about building something that lasts. I barely touched my food. I just watched, waited, measured the room. Timing matters. Too early and people dismiss. Too late and the moment passes. You have to let the tension breathe. Halfway through dinner, he turned to me. "Naomi," he said, swirling his wine glass. "How's work these days? Still buried in spreadsheets?" "Still making numbers make sense," I answered. He smiled. "Good. I've always believed in people staying in their lanes." There it was. The setup. I nodded once. Didn't take the bait. Mom shifted uncomfortably. "Nathan." He waved her off. No, it's fine. I actually think it's time we acknowledge something." The room quieted. Veronica looked up. Kyle froze again. Nathan leaned back slightly, completely at ease. "We're restructuring things," he said. "Reassigning roles, so to speak." My grip tightened slightly under the table. Not from anger, from recognition. He was doing it again. Public positioning. Power through humiliation. "You've always been independent, Naomi," he continued. "And while that's admirable, it also means you're not really part of the core family unit anymore." Silence dropped like a weight. My mother's face flushed. "Nathan, please." But he kept going. "It's nothing personal. It's just about alignment. Shared values. Shared direction." I leaned back slowly in my chair. "That's one way to put it." He smiled. "Exactly." He thought he had already won the room. That was the mistake. I pushed my chair back and stood. "I need some air," I said. "Of course," he replied, almost generous now. "Don't take it personally." I didn't answer. I stepped outside. The cold air hit my face immediately. Sharp, clean. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, opened the email. My thumb hovered over the screen for less than a second. Not hesitation. Just precision. Then, I tapped send. The message left instantly. Delivered to Mom Veronica, Aunt Ruth, Pete, local authorities, Financial Crimes Division. No taking it back. No softening it. No warning. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and walked inside. Same calm expression. Same steady pace. I sat back down like nothing had happened. 5 seconds. 10. Then, a buzz. Veronica's phone. She frowned, glanced down, scrolled, and her expression shattered. "Dad, what is this?" Nathan's smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" Another buzz. My mom's phone. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She read. Then looked up at him, slowly. "Nathan, what is this?" He reached for her phone. She pulled it back. More buzzes. Aunt Ruth. Pete. The entire table lit up with notifications. Veronica stood up, voice shaking. "These are documents, mortgages, insurance. Mom's name is on all of this." Nathan stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Fabrications." I cut in calm. "Your spreadsheets say otherwise, especially the one labeled Exit Window Q1. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. He looked at me, and in that split second, I saw it. Recognition. Not confusion. Not denial. Recognition. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped. Then explain why the same document exists in your archive for your first wife, I said. Same structure, same timeline, same payout sequence. My mother covered her mouth. You forged my signature? She whispered. Elizabeth, please. I understand enough, she said, her voice breaking but steady underneath. Veronica stepped back, tears forming. You did this to Mom too? Sit down, Nathan barked. No, she said. You killed her, didn't you? The room exploded. Voices overlapping. Aunt Ruth shouting. Pete stepping forward. Kyle backing away. My mother frozen. Nathan slammed his fist on the table. That's enough. But it wasn't. Not anymore. I stayed seated. Still. Watching. Because the moment had already passed him. Control was gone. He turned toward me, pointing. You think this is clever? You just ruined your mother's life. I met his eyes. No, I said quietly. I just saved it. He laughed once, sharp and hollow. You think anyone's going to believe this? They already do, I replied. The Financial Crimes Division has it. They're probably reading it right now. That was it. The break. His face drained. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked unsure. My mother stood. Get out of my house. He didn't move. Elizabeth. Get out. Louder this time. Clear. Final. He grabbed his coat, muttering under his breath. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, standing now. But you're the one who'll need a lawyer. He slammed the door behind him. The house fell into a silence that felt completely different from before. Not tense. Not controlled. Broken. Real. My mother sat down slowly, staring at her hands. Veronica moved behind her, wrapping her arms around her shoulders. Aunt Ruth was already on the phone. Pete stepped outside, pacing. I walked out onto the porch again. Cold air. Quiet street. I checked my phone. Delivered. Read receipts already coming in. 2 from official addresses. It was over. Not the aftermath. Not the legal fight. But the illusion. That was gone. And once that's gone, everything else follows. I leaned against my car and looked back at the house. Lights still on. People moving inside. But something fundamental had shifted. Nathan had spent years building control. Systems. Plans. Exit windows. He thought he was managing outcomes. What he never accounted for was someone reading the entire playbook and deciding to end the story early. Trial, conviction, and the quiet return of a real family. That night didn't end when Nathan walked out. It started. My mom sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, her hands still shaking slightly, like her body hadn't caught up to what had just happened. Veronica stayed close to her, quiet now, the anger replaced by something heavier, realization. Aunt Ruth moved between rooms, already in problem-solving mode, calling someone she knew from church. A lawyer, she whispered to me as she passed. He's awake. Good, I said. Because once something like this breaks open, speed matters. Not emotion. Action. I pulled my laptop out and sat at the coffee table. Mom, I said gently, we need to lock everything down. She looked at me, still dazed. He has access to all of it. Not anymore. I logged into her banking accounts right there in front of her. Change passwords. Enabled 2-factor authentication. Revoked all secondary access. Every click felt like closing a door behind him. Digital locks replacing physical ones. By the time I was done, Nathan was cut off. Completely. Aunt Ruth came back in. He says to file reports tonight, she said. Fraud. Financial exploitation. Perfect, I replied. We'll need case numbers before morning. Veronica handed me her phone. You should see this. Nathan's social profile. Gone. Deleted or hidden. Didn't matter. Men like him think erasing a profile erases a past. It doesn't. Later that night, I reorganized everything I had sent earlier. Same evidence. Cleaner structure. Clear timelines. Proper labeling. By midnight, I forwarded the full package to the Financial Crimes Division and local authorities again, this time formatted for investigators, not family. At 1:17 a.m., an automated reply came through. Case received, pending review. I leaned back. Now we wait. We didn't have to wait long. By morning, 2 detectives stood in my mom's living room. One of them, a woman named Patel, flipped through the printed files I'd prepared. This is one of the cleanest evidence chains I've seen in years, she said, glancing up at me. You do this professionally? Data analysis, I replied. She nodded. We can tell. The second detective, Morales, was already on his phone, coordinating with banks. Emergency freeze requests are going out now, he said. Mom sat quietly. So, it's real? She asked. Patel looked at her gently. It's very real, ma'am, and none of this is your fault. Veronica spoke up then, her voice shaking. He had me sign some insurance forms, she said. He said it was just paperwork. Patel wrote that down immediately. That helps, she said. It shows intent. Around noon, Morales' phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then at us. He just tried to wire $200,000 offshore. Everyone froze. Where? I asked. Belize, he said. The system had flagged it instantly. Within minutes, the transfer was blocked. An arrest warrant followed shortly after. Nathan didn't get far. They picked him up later that week at a rest stop off the interstate. Calm, composed, still believing he could talk his way out. But this time he wasn't controlling the narrative. I spent the next few days on the phone with investigators, verifying data, confirming timelines, handing over backup files. That's when Patel told me something that changed everything. "We're reopening Donna Anderson's case," she said. I went still. "Why?" "Vehicle maintenance records," she replied. "The brake line reports were forged." There it was. Proof. Not just fraud. Not just exploitation. Murder. My mom heard that part of the call. She didn't cry. She didn't react at all. She just sat there, staring ahead. "He told me she fell asleep at the wheel," she said quietly. "Yeah," I answered. That's what the report said. The trial took months to prepare. Evidence. Motions. Forensics. But when it finally came, it moved fast. The courtroom was packed. Reporters. Observers. People who had lost something to men like Nathan. He walked in wearing a dark suit, clean-shaven, composed. The same controlled arrogance. Like he still thought this was a negotiation. My mom sat behind the prosecution with Veronica and Aunt Ruth. She didn't look at him. Not once. When they called me to testify, I stood up and walked to the stand without notes. I didn't need them. I had lived every line. "Ms. Carter," the prosecutor said, "can you explain how you obtained these documents?" "From his laptop," I answered. "He left it open. I created a read-only backup and turned it over to investigators." They projected the folder onto the screen. Legacy_plan. File names filled the display. Archive. Estate updates. Exit window. "Walk us through it," she said. So I did. Step by step. Transfers. Forged signatures. Matching timelines. Repeated structure. I explained the pattern. Not emotionally. Clinically. Because truth hits harder when it doesn't need drama. When I finished, she asked one final question. "In your professional opinion, was this coincidence?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "It was a system." Silence filled the courtroom. Even the judge looked up. The defense tried to shake me. Said the files could have been planted. I handed over the forensic hash codes. Verification. Integrity. They pivoted. Tried to paint me as biased. Family conflict. Personal motive. I let them talk. Because none of that changes data. When I stepped down, the prosecutor leaned in slightly. "You just buried him," she whispered. By day 3, the forensic experts confirmed everything. Every signature forged. Every document manipulated. Every file cloned and reused. The FBI cyber unit traced the duplication patterns back years. This wasn't a one-time scheme. It was a template. Day 5 sealed it. Financial trails. Insurance claims. Shell accounts. The failed offshore transfer. The pattern was so precise it almost felt designed for exposure. Nathan stopped taking notes. Stopped reacting. Just stared ahead. The defense made one last attempt. Mental instability. Compulsive behavior. It collapsed within minutes. Too much planning. Too much structure. Too much intent. When the jury went out, they came back in less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Fraud. Forgery. Identity theft. Elder exploitation. Conspiracy. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison. Nathan finally spoke. "You think you stopped me," he said, his voice low. "You just destroyed your own family." My mom stood. "You were never part of this family." That was the last word he heard from us. After the trial, everything slowed down. Quietly. Gradually. Like a storm passing. My mom finalized the divorce. Veronica cut contact completely and moved to another state. Healing didn't come fast. But it came. Piece by piece. 2 years later, Thanksgiving looked different. No catered food. No staged table. No performance. Just real dishes. Real laughter. Real quiet. My mom stood in the kitchen, calmer than I had seen her in years. She had started dating again. A retired teacher named Daniel. Soft-spoken. Kind. The kind of man who helped without announcing it. Who washed dishes without being asked. Who didn't need control to feel important. He shook my hand the first time we met like he understood exactly what respect meant. And me. I wasn't alone anymore either. Ethan stood beside me in that kitchen, sleeves rolled up, arguing with Aunt Ruth about pie like he had always belonged there. We met by accident. A hardware store. Wrong aisle. Same sense of humor. He didn't ask too many questions. Didn't try to fix things that weren't his to fix. He just stayed. Dinner that night was quiet in the best way. No tension. No hierarchy. No one trying to control the room. Just people who chose to be there. Before we ate, my mom stood. "There's one tradition I want to keep," she said. She nodded toward the head of the table. My father's chair. Empty. No name. No replacement. Just space. "For the people who protected us," she said softly. "The ones who aren't here, and the ones who stayed when it mattered." We all raised our glasses. No speeches. No performance. Just understanding. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the living room. My laptop open. One last folder still sitting on the screen. Legacy Plan Archive. I hadn't opened it since the trial. Didn't need to. But something about that night, the quiet, made it feel like it was time. I clicked it. Scrolled once. Twice. Every document. Every file. Everything that had once been a weapon. Then I selected all. Hovered over delete. And paused. Not because I doubted it. Because I understood it. What it had cost. What it had saved. Then I clicked. The screen cleared. No files. No traces. No more wait. Ethan stepped into the room. What was that? He asked. Just old files, I said. He nodded. Good. I closed the laptop. Looked around the room. At the walls. At the space. At the quiet. For the first time in a long time, it felt real. Not staged. Not controlled. Not fragile. Just ours. 2 years ago, Nathan built a plan to end my mother's life. I rewrote it. And now, for the first time, we finally had one of our own.